Let's talk about some board game crowdfunding. We're going to talk about the big one this week, God of War, but we're also going to talk about the other campaigns as well.
Yeah, it's time for crowd control. Dragon Bond Lords of Vala is the first one I want to talk about, and this is back again with a gigantic amount of content.
This is a big amount of content. They actually had sent us a copy of the original one, and it was just the base box. I'm a little confused. They talk about some expansions that had been available through Backer
Yeah, I
Kit.
didn't know about these expansions.
This is going to be the first time on Kickstarter where all of the things are available, plus I think even a new little something.
Well, no, it's a new big something, actually, I would say. But all the different expansions. So if you don't know this game, you're playing as either a dragon or an army, and it's got a little bit of an asymmetric gameplay, but it is kind of a troops on the map style game. Yeah. You're moving your army around the map, or your dragon trying to complete different objectives. The reason it's called Dragon Bond is because those generals and those dragons can meet and they can form alliances, a dragon bond. But what the newest expansion brings, of course, all the other ones I should say, there's tons of content as far as new dragons, new armies, new things to fight, new things to do. Like there's, I lost count of how many different boxes there are.
If you look at the top of their page, the big picture shows a ton of stuff.
Including like some epic variants for your characters that allow you to have some more decisions to make as far as growth. But the real key here is the narrative that's being added into the game. So this is a box. They're calling this like a great starting point for people that are new to the game, but also if you've played through all the content, this is giving you something new to do in the game. And it is a narrative version of the game that allows you to interact with different areas on the board, going into some kind of narrative format, and experiencing a story through this game as well. All of this and all of the content that comes in with all of this narrative stuff, including special cards and characters, all that's brand new for this campaign.
Yeah, this thing. One thing I will say about this, I've never played the game. I don't think you've played the game before.
I haven't. It's in calling my name though.
Taking a look at it in my hands when we had the base game, the production value on this is fantastic.
Yeah, and
like troops on the map is not my kind of thing. But I gotta tell you, when I was looking through the box of the base game, I was like, oh, I kind of want to play. This looks gorgeous.
It does.
Draco Studios does a fantastic production value, so there is that as well. But definitely check that out. The next game we want to talk about also has some really cool production value.
That's true.
It's called Bloom Chasers, and if you look at this right away, we're probably putting an image up right now. There's this incredible tree that sits in the middle of the table. And there's a video that they had on their campaign page that talks about like that they worked with someone to come up with this concept. It actually looks like it started out with this like multi-tiered board where they're putting hex tiles on it. But they have this 3D modeled tree trunk that you add these branches to, then you're adding flowers, then you're adding blooms to the flowers. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I said this to Ryan before we started recording, at a convention or in a board game store, if this thing's on the table, boy, I mean, it's just gonna sell.
It's gonna sell itself.
People are gonna look at this and go, "Wow!" I mean, it's a gimmick for sure, but a gimmick in the best sense of the term. Well, I'm not using that term in a negative way at all.
Right. So on one hand, the gameplay does look satisfying. It's almost like a puzzle game. You're placing your flowers in different positions on this tree to make them bloom, and other players are playing branches and flowers and things like that to block you. But for me, the tree is the selling point, and when it's done, when you've finished, you have this gorgeous looking tree. They even say this in the video, but I would think this anyway. You put this game out somewhere in your house, you bring in your family or friends, and they're like, hey, what's that tree? Hey, I'll show you. Let's play, you know?
It kind of looked a little bonsai a little bit in terms of the way the tree ends up. It's very colorful, a lot of flowers on it. Like I said, it's got what looks like fairly straightforward, simple gameplay, but like Ryan said, sounds like it can get pretty competitive.
I mean, it's definitely a strategic game, yeah.
But yeah, really cool game.
Yeah, and just absolutely gorgeous. I'm the person that would keep the tree out. So both of those games are running right now, but we wanted to talk about two big games that are launching this week. The first one is the new version of Mindbug.
Yes.
This is called Battle Fruit.
And by big, you mean big in terms of its potential success.
I do mean big. The game itself is very small. If you've never heard of Mindbug or never seen us play it, this is from Richard Garfield, the designer of Magic and countless other games. But
among other people.
Among other people. It's got a whole team, but it almost has that CCG feel where you're playing against each other, against an opponent with cards from the same deck. But what makes Mindbug so interesting is this mechanic of when I play a card, you can use one of your Mindbugs to take it onto your side as well. So there's this whole almost guessing game.
Yeah, the mind games in this are insane. Nelson Oliver, our friend, put it best. Mindbug is chaos in a box.
Yeah, and it's
fun chaos in a box because you have a limited amount of cards you're playing with. And this new, basically, addition, you can get this as a standalone. I'm sure you can get into the campaign, get all things Mindbug for sure.
I think this is like the third campaign for Mindbug.
There's all sorts of mixing and matching you can do. This is a nice little two-player game that gives you that card battling thing.
It kind of is two-player.
Now.
Yeah. Battlefruit introduces a four-player game mode, which looks absolutely insane. It's actually a different set of cards that require you to play as teams. So you have a teammate, and now some of the cards that you play actually have a teammate keyword that are going to interact with your teammate on the board as well. So I don't exactly know. We haven't seen the full rules for this or how the mind bugs are going to work.
We do have it right here. I don't know if the multiplayer rules are in here. We are going to be playing this, by the way. If you're watching this on Monday when we drop this video, we plan on live streaming this on Wednesday. So be sure to
it's always a blast. It is chaos, but it triggers all of the things you want it to trigger in like a 15-minute game.
Oh, it's very short. So if you're like, oh, chaotic, it's super short, so you just play it multiple times over and over and over.
All right.
The last one we want to talk about, this is a big one. We do have a little extra one that we want to mention at the end, but the big one is God of War. We are planning some content on this. We're lucky enough to get a chance to run through the game on TTS. We don't have a prototype or anything sitting here.
I don't think they even have a prototype.
I don't know that they do.
I mean, when you're working on a game like God of War and you're working with Sony, I mean, there is a lot.
It's a licensed IP, so they have to jump through some hoops for sure. But the cool thing about God of War, it takes place between the God of War game from like I think 2018.
Yeah, the next gen one.
And Ragnarok.
Yeah.
So
it bridges that gap.
It bridges that gap. Now, it is not canon in that gap. But it is kind of
canon if you want it to be.
It's an imagining of what
could have happened. Is what they said. Yeah.
So it gives them a lot of leeway to explore things since it's not exactly canon. But it gives you the opportunity to play a cooperative game. You can play this single player, but the way I'm going to play it is two-player, and it is a two-player game. You're going to be playing as Atreus and
Kratos.
Kratos?
Yeah. Kratos, whatever.
Kratos. Kratos and Atreus, if you're familiar with the games, you know who these people are. If you're not, father and son. And the cool aspect of the game that they've got going on, this is a miniatures game where you're going to be going through scenarios, fighting monsters, getting to a boss eventually. Not necessarily a campaign type experience. You're going to be able to do these sort of one-off. You're going to be able to sort of mix and match and kind of variably build the scenario you're wanting to play with whatever boss. Things like that.
And even the monsters and everything.
Even the monsters. They've got a lot of different options. But it really encourages cooperation. I know most cooperative games do, but this one actually rewards players for doing things that have some synergy with one another, and you'll be able to earn some rewards and some benefits if you play in a highly cooperative way.
And I think it's worth mentioning too, because we've said things like, you play through scenarios, you use tiles, whatever. But this is a brand new game. This is a brand new system. I think it's worth mentioning.
This is not Zombicide. This is not a reskin of any other CMON
Massive Darkness
game. No.
Or Death May Die. This is completely new.
This game feels very different. There's got some really interesting card play. It is basically revolve around card play. There are some dice, but it is not a dice rolling game. It's really
it's very strategic and deterministic.
Incredibly strategic and deterministic.
You'll learn more when we can actually talk more in detail in our video, but I will say the thing that draws me to this game the most is that focus on teamwork. Since they're building a new engine, since they're building a completely new game, they were able to build in specific mechanics that really require you to work together.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are playing both, you will get that sense of rewarding of timing. But when you're playing with another player and like working that out, I think that's a really good feeling.
Yeah, we immediately went there when we played. We were like, first turn, we were like, okay, how can we do this to maximize those synergies? Because that's really the big, more interesting puzzle at the table for sure. The last one we wanted to talk about, also on Gamefound, this is just a mention, but I have to mention it because it's so close to my heart. This is the special edition of Castles of Burgundy. It is back. It's back again on Gamefound. I'm not going to sing this time. If you haven't seen this thing, if you're not a fan, if you've never even played Castles of Burgundy, first of all, what are you doing? Secondly, this is the end-all be-all version of
Yeah,
Castles
it
of
is.
Burgundy.
It's
Long time ago,
beautiful.
when I fell in love with the original, I said to myself, man, I just wish they would make a deluxe version of Castles of Burgundy. And this special edition is that and more.
I mean,
they
this
had
is
all sorts of extra
the definitive
content.
edition, for
It
sure.
is. And like we have the whole thing with all the fixings. I didn't think I'd enjoy the 3D turning at first,
Yeah, it's fun.
but I do.
It's just fun. And I've heard a lot of FOMO around this. So I know a lot of you are already really excited to see that it's back. But if you were kicking yourself for missing it, now you got another chance, and you're not having to pay those high prices.
You're hearing it here first because I just thought of this. We've had some content on the channel, so go check that out as well. But we might do another piece of content where we just dive in, maybe even a live stream.
There's so many
where
different expansions.
You ask us anything about it, we'll answer it with our opinions on the game. Obviously, it sounds like we're going to have fairly positive opinions, but you can ask us anything.
David's like, nah, I actually don't really like it that much.
If you ask me about the integrity of the box, it may be mildly less positive. It's a big box.
It is a bit. It
has a lot of weight in it. You got to be careful with it. You can't toss that thing around.
Yeah, but it's so much fun, and I had a great time playing it on the live stream.
Anyway, that is this week's episode of Crowd Control. We are all done talking about it. There's some other campaigns going on.
There's always more than we can talk about.
And if you know of any that we didn't talk about today, and you're like, whoa, what are these guys are completely out of the loop? Get down in the comments below and let us know. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.